They say family is everything, but sometimes family becomes your greatest enemy. I'm Margaret, born in 1934 in the rolling hills of Tennessee. Back in 2019, at age 85, my own son David and his wife Sarah tried to have me killed for my money. I felt my world crumble beneath me. But then something happened that changed everything. Today, at 90 years old in my cozy living room, I'm finally sharing this because every elder deserves to know they're not powerless. If you're listening, drop your location below, and please subscribe to hear more stories like mine. It started innocently enough. David had been visiting more frequently, always with Sarah by his side. Their smiles a little too bright, their concern a little too rehearsed. "Mom, you're getting older," David would say, his voice dripping with false compassion. "Maybe it's time to consider Sunset Manor. It's a beautiful place, and you'd have so much help there." Sarah would nod enthusiastically, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against my kitchen table. "We just want what's best for you, Margaret. Living alone at your age, it's dangerous." But I wasn't ready. This house held 60 years of memories. My late husband's workshop still smelled like sawdust, our wedding photos lined the hallway, and my garden bloomed with roses I'd planted as a young bride. "I'm fine here," I'd insist, watching their faces tighten with frustration. The visits became more frequent, more insistent. They'd point out every creaky floorboard, every slightly dusty corner, building their case like prosecutors in a courtroom. Then came the day that changed everything. I'd gone to visit my sister in Nashville, planning to stay the weekend. But Saturday morning brought terrible news: she'd had a stroke and was rushed to the hospital. Heartbroken and worried, I drove straight home, arriving 3 hours earlier than expected. The house was dark except for the kitchen light, and I could hear voices drifting from the living room. "The old bat is finally out of the way for the weekend," Sarah's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Did you get the papers from the lawyer?" My blood turned to ice as I crept closer, staying hidden in the shadows of my own hallway. "Yeah, but we need her declared incompetent first," David replied, his voice cold and calculating. "Once she's in Sunset Manor, we can work on that. The staff there owes me a favor." "And if she fights it?" Sarah asked. "Simple. A little something in her medication makes it look like her heart finally gave out. She's 85, who's going to question it? Then we inherit everything. The house, the land, her savings, everything." David laughed, a sound that chilled me to my bones. "Mom always said I was her precious boy. Well, precious boys deserve their inheritance." I pressed my back against the wall, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they'd hear it. These were my son and daughter-in-law, people I'd welcomed into my home, cooked for, loved unconditionally. And they were planning my murder like they were discussing the weather. Sarah continued. "I already talked to Kelly at the nursing home. She'll help us get the incompetency papers signed. A little money under the table, and suddenly Margaret can't take care of herself anymore." "Perfect," David said. "Once she's there, we give it a month, maybe 2. Let her get settled, then." "Accident. Heart attack. Natural causes. The inheritance will be ours by Christmas." They clinked glasses, toasting my death like it was a business deal. I stood there in my own hallway, listening to my son plan my murder, and something inside me snapped. Not with despair but with rage.
Pure, cristalline rage.
I slipped back outside, got in my car and drove around the block, my mind racing. When I returned 20 minutes later, making sure to slam the door and call out loudly, they were sitting innocently on my couch, watching television. "How's your sister?" David asked, his face a mask of concern. "Much better," I lied smoothly. "False alarm. You know how hospitals can be." Sarah smiled that plastic smile. "We're so glad you're home safe, Margaret. We worry about you driving at night." Over the next few weeks, I became an actress worthy of an Oscar. I played the part of the declining elderly woman, perfectly forgetting names, seeming confused about dates, leaving the stove on just long enough for them to notice. All while secretly recording every conversation, every scheming phone call, every whispered plan. I'd invested in a tiny recording device, no bigger than a button, and I wore it everywhere. The evidence I gathered was damning. Sarah discusses forged medical documents with Kelly from Sunset Manor. David called lawyers about expediting probate. Phone calls about life insurance policies I didn't even know existed. They'd been planning this for months, maybe years. Every concerned visit had been reconnaissance. Every suggestion about my health had been manipulation. I also discovered David had been slowly draining my bank accounts, transferring small amounts to joint accounts I'd never authorized. Sarah had taken out insurance policies on my life, listing herself as beneficiary. They'd been stealing from me while planning my death, and I had it all on tape. But I needed more than recordings. I needed a plan that would protect me and ensure justice. That's when I called my real lawyer, not the one David thought I was using, but Harold Brennan, a sharp attorney I'd known for 30 years. "Harold," I said during our secret meeting, "I need to disappear my assets where they can never touch them." Within a week, everything I owned was transferred into an irrevocable trust called Margaret's Shield, managed by Harold and benefiting local charities and my grandson Tommy, David's son who'd always been kind to me. The final phase of my plan began with hidden cameras. Harold helped me install tiny devices throughout my house in the living room, kitchen, even my bedroom where they discussed the accident they were planning. Every scheming conversation, every cold calculation about my death, was now being recorded in high definition. I watched them through my laptop screen. These two people I'd once loved, plotting my murder with the casual efficiency of planning a grocery list. 3 weeks later, I announced I was ready to visit Sunset Manor. "You were right," I told David, letting my voice shake just enough. "I can't manage alone anymore. Maybe it's time." The relief on their faces was sickening. Sarah actually clapped her hands together like a child getting a present. "Oh, Margaret, you're making the right choice. We'll take such good care of everything while you're settling in." But instead of the nursing home, I drove straight to the police station. Detective Maria Santos listened to my recordings with growing horror. "Mrs. Henderson, this is attempted elder abuse, conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. We need to move carefully to build an airtight case." Over the next 2 weeks, the police worked with me to gather additional evidence. They recorded phone calls where Sarah discussed the forged medical documents with Kelly, who turned out to be more than willing to participate in declaring me incompetent for the right price. The breakthrough came when they caught David accessing my bank accounts illegally. The police had been monitoring everything, and they watched him transfer another $1,000 to his personal account. Sarah, meanwhile, had been calling insurance companies, asking about claim procedures and how quickly policies paid out after natural deaths. Every call was recorded, every transaction documented. Then came my birthday party, the trap I'd been setting for weeks. I'd invited the whole family, telling David and Sarah I wanted one last celebration before moving to Sunset Manor. "It'll be perfect," I told them, watching their eyes light up with greed. All my friends, all my family, one final goodbye to this old house. What they didn't know was that Detective Santos and 2 other officers would be there, disguised as catering staff. The party was beautiful. My living room was filled with neighbors, church friends, and family members who genuinely cared about me. Tommy, my grandson, had driven down from Kentucky with his girlfriend Lisa. He hugged me tight and whispered, "Grandma, are you sure about the nursing home? You seem so sharp, so healthy." I squeezed his hand. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything's going to be just fine." As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, I stood up and tapped my wine glass. "Before everyone goes, I have something important to share." David and Sarah exchanged glances, probably thinking I was about to announce my move to Sunset Manor. Instead, I walked to my laptop and connected it to the television. "I want you all to hear something that was recorded right here in this room." The first recording began playing Sarah's voice crystal clear. "The old bat is finally out of the way for the weekend." The room fell silent. David's face went white as his own voice followed. "A little something in her medication. Make it look like her heart finally gave out." Gasps echoed through the room. Tommy stood up, his face a mask of shock and rage. "Dad, what is this?" I played recording after recording. Their discussions about forged documents, about Kelly's cooperation, about insurance policies and inheritance timelines. Sarah tried to run, but Detective Santos stepped forward, badge visible. "Sarah Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and insurance fraud." David collapsed into a chair as the second officer read him his rights. The trial 3 months later was a media sensation. Harold presented our evidence methodically: the recordings, the video footage, the financial records showing David's theft, the insurance policies Sarah had secretly taken out. Kelly from Sunset Manor testified about Sarah's attempts to bribe her into falsifying my medical records. She offered me $5,000 to sign papers saying Mrs. Henderson was incompetent and needed immediate care, Kelly told the packed courtroom. The most devastating testimony came from Sarah's own mother, Eleanor, who took the stand with tears streaming down her face. "I raised my daughter to be better than this," she said, her voice breaking. "To plot the murder of an elderly woman, a woman who welcomed her into the family. I don't know this person. She is no longer my daughter." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Eleanor's sobs. When the guilty verdicts were read: conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, fraud, and theft, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I'd been carrying for months. David got 15 years, Sarah got 12. As they were led away in handcuffs, David looked back at me one last time. I saw no remorse in his eyes, only anger that his plan had failed. But my story didn't end with their imprisonment. I used the media attention to launch the Margaret Shield Foundation, dedicated to protecting elderly people from family abuse. Family should be a sanctuary, I told reporters, not a hunting ground for predators. The foundation provides legal aid, safe housing, and advocacy for elderly victims of abuse. Tommy moved back to Tennessee to help me run the foundation. "Grandma," he said one evening as we worked in my garden, "I'm so sorry about Dad. I had no idea." I took his hands in mine, these young hands so different from his father's grasping ones. "Sweetheart, you are not responsible for his choices. You are your own person and you're a good one." Years passed. The foundation grew, helping hundreds of elderly people escape abuse and protect their assets. I appeared on television shows, sharing my story and educating people about the warning signs of elder abuse. At 90, I walked Tommy down the aisle at his wedding to Lisa, fulfilling a promise I'd made when he was just a boy. As I watched them dance, surrounded by love and genuine family, I realized that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well and helping others do the same. Today, I'm still here, still fighting, still protecting those who can't protect themselves. If my story teaches you anything, let it be this: you are never too old to fight back, never too vulnerable to seek justice, and never too alone to find help. Trust your instincts, document everything, and remember, real family protects you. They don't prey on you. Moral lesson: through courage and wisdom, even the deepest betrayals can become catalysts for justice, transforming victims into advocates who light the path for others seeking protection and hope.